Good afternoon. Welcome to Community and Technology, where we connect the global community with news, information, and resources that we hope will help improve your life. I'm Stu Reid. Here's my co-host, Dave Burstein. Hey, Dave,
Hey,
what's going on?
well, I didn't want to go into it too deeply, but it's important to understand everybody who's looked at public policy and environmental knows this story for 20 years. Jenny actually covered it way back when. It is clear that pollution and the environment are a racial issue as well as a general health issue. There's overwhelming evidence that poor people, and Blacks in particular, are much more affected by pollution than the average white, presumably because the things like garbage incinerators and sewage treatment plants are far more likely to be located in poor neighborhoods. Stu, do you remember the story about the sewage plant that's now on 145th Street?
I don't remember that story in particular, but I just know I've just seen it all around. The Con Ed has a treatment facility on the Bruckner Expressway, right on the edge of Black and Latino community. I see major highways that intersect and go right through Black communities. Right here in my own community here in New Rochelle, where I live, 95 just dissected, if you will, the Black community here in New Rochelle. Similarly, 95, the Cross Bronx Expressway, just went right through the Bronx.
Oh, that one was a
And
big disaster.
I mean, just the truck pollution alone, Dave, is incredible. And I know from my own personal experience, friends and family that live in Harlem and the Bronx, the asthma rates are extremely high, Dave. And just the congestive disease and dysfunction as a result of the bad air is just extremely high.
And the reason I brought it to this show is there's a new article in Nature, it's about as reputable as you can get, mostly from a team at Stanford, that had some horrifying numbers about how big the effect was. I'm not going to reproduce them because it seems so high to me that I didn't want to put it on unless I really researched it and knew it. But it's definitely an issue, and
You
we
know,
just got some proof
yeah,
in Nature.
I'm hoping. I mean, it's a long-term solution, but I'm hoping one aspect of mitigation is going to be the evolution to electric vehicles. That's probably 10, 15, 20 years away before it has a real substantive impact on the overall use of gasoline burning vehicles. But at least that's a positive trend that I think is going to help the air quality. I don't know about the waste management and waste control, whether or not technology is helping to improve the efficiency of those technologies and improving the pollution that they put out in the air. Did the story you looked at mention that at all, Dave, in terms of the waste management in pollution?
Uh, no, they looked at the level of pollution,
Just in
not what
general.
against them, and
Yeah,
what neighborhoods it were in, and
yeah,
who was most affected.
yeah.
And it was the statistics behind it were rather complicated, and I'm happy to bring to the air a story from Stanford and Nature, but I'm not going to try to go into depth
Yeah,
on it until I
yeah,
understand because I
yeah. Well,
did some
as
fancy
I said,
numbers.
Dave, I think that's something that a lot of Black folks, especially in the urban centers, have a real firsthand experience with, and that is asthma in particular and other breathing difficulties and lung infections and respiratory disorders as a result of just where we live. And, when I say we, I'm talking about Black and brown folks, tend to be live in the neighborhoods where a lot of that activity. I'm talking about the carbon dioxide from the trucking and the transportation industries and the waste management industries are located. So, I'm not surprised at all at that study that you just referenced in Nature.
the numbers were bigger than I'd ever seen before, which is why
Hmm.
I'm being hesitant. But the fact that reputable people got such big numbers reinforces it. The story of the waste management plant is one of the clearest examples ever. I grew up on West 83rd Street. It
Hmm.
was poor when I was a kid. That was the days of West Side Story and the gangs. But later on, it became first middle class, and now it costs you $3,000 for a studio apartment there.
Hmm.
For a decade, they had been planning to put the huge sewage treatment plant that Manhattan needed at about 80th Street in the Hudson River. Oh, did all the politicians on the West Side scream. And they had so much power that they moved this enormous sewage treatment plant up to 145th Street in Harlem.
Oh, yeah, that's Riverbank. Riverbank. That's what you were talking about. Yeah, I'm familiar
Yeah,
with that.
to try to hide what was going on, they put actually a nice sports facility on top of it, and
Yeah,
you only sometimes can smell the
yeah.
sewage.
Sometimes it stinks to high heaven. I spent a lot of time there, Dave, in that annually for some time. The Housing Authority had a senior festival event at that location. And for about 3 or 4 years, my partner Doug Frazier and I put in Wi-Fi up there at the park, Dave. As a matter of fact, Riverbank State Park, which was created and sits on top of the waste management facility that you're talking about. They created a state park there, and it was the first New York State park with free public Wi-Fi provided by Digital Divide Partners, Doug Frazier and Stu Reid, back about a dozen years ago or so. And a nice facility, sit right there on Riverside Drive, beautiful landscape, beautiful view of the bridge. But every now and then, Dave, the scent coming from what is below, it will really kind of take your breath away, literally. So, I guess that's another one of those things where they put it in our community and they sugarcoated it with the recreation facility. I think there's a basketball course, there's an ice skating rink,
There's
uh,
a swimming
there's a
pool.
gymnasium. Yeah, there's a lot of sports facilities there. It's unfortunate that we got to take the poison with that to get those kind of amenities.
Now, for 50 years, a lot of people in this country have been trying to get cleaner air, cleaner water, improve the environment. And it's actually much better. Apparently, the Hudson River is acceptable to swim in now,
Mm,
which was inconceivable in my day.
wow, wow.
Yeah. And the air is much less polluted on average, and the
Hmm.
cars are putting out much less pollution. There's been a fair number of successes there. That is being eroded big time by the Supreme Court with the judges appointed by Donald Trump. Now, you were going to bring one of the cases on how the regulations are just being wiped out wholesale to the show. So why don't I hand it to you and then I'll take it back.
Okay, well, the Supreme Court just ruled just last week on Thursday that decisions by the SEC, Securities Exchange Commission, in a fraud case should be litigated in court as opposed to following along agency rules and decisions. It also is knocking out something called the Chevron doctrine. There was a ruling in 1984, Dave, you probably know something about this, Chevron versus natural resources, where federal agencies were given power to interpret laws when rulemaking ensured that lower courts deferred to them. So this has had a big effect over the last, 40 years or so in terms of empowering agencies, not just the SEC, but agencies like the FCC, which regulates, telecom, which we talk about all the time. Things like net
Chevron
neutrality
goes
rules.
right into, yeah, you got it. Chevron
Mhm.
goes right into the heart of the net neutrality
Yeah,
debate. The FCC took a decent position on it. Most of the courts have upheld it, but what the Supreme Court just did may kill it.
yeah. I mean,
It's
it's gonna have it look. You know, I'm not an expert on this stuff, Dave, but just reading what the experts who do know about this stuff are saying is that it's taking a huge swath of power away from agencies, many of which over the last 30, 40 years have come up with rules to help protect the environment, to protect people, to enhance the lifestyle and the quality of life for people in the US. And the power is now being taken from them and given to the courts. And given what Trump has done and just a whole conservative bent and trajectory that the judicial system seems to be on, it looks like we could be in big trouble when we got things like the environment no longer being protected by the EPA, but now subject to the court's rulings. And I fear, so much of what we've seen, David, is that the big corporations, the big money, are the ones that the courts have, certainly the conservative court, has been swinging to their, to playing to their tune. So, the EPA could be gutted, the FCC could be gutted, the SEC, all these agencies that are there to protect consumers, to protect our health. Um, a lot of those regulations now could be gutted and now up to the courts and no longer up to the agencies who, at least for the last 40 years or so, have been given the power to control and regulate these things.
yes and no. This is what's that what you just said is what's going to happen in the real world. The court made the decision on an ivory tower piece of nonsense. What is that? The courts always had the authority. The courts could overrule the agencies. This gave them much more power, and that's the Chevron run. And one of the cases the Supreme Court just did said the ordinary way to put an environmental fine out there is going to an administrative law judge, an official in the EPA or the Justice Department. That's a reasonable thing to do. They're appointed by the president. They're a kind of judge. But what the court has just done is saying they are against the Constitution, which guaranteed people right to a judge and jury. Sounds really reasonable. Problem. To bring a court case on environmental stuff, if you're the EPA, you need a team of 20 people working for 3 years and a budget of $50 to $100 million. More than that, the Google, Facebook, Microsoft antitrust are going to wind up costing more than $1 billion, which means that for practical purposes, many, perhaps most of the enforcement actions, the EPA wouldn't dare touch because they'd lose in court because they don't have enough people to go against the $5 million a year silver tongues DC lawyers who are hired by the big companies. And that $5 million a year is a real number. There's one I know, $18 million a year for a Washington lobbyist lawyer. It was David Cohn. He did all the work for Comcast. And it was so much money they had to give his salary in a financial filing, which is where I saw it. But when I say five million, I may be a crazy leftist, but the facts are very clear there.
Now, one of the writers about this same story we're talking about took another view, and he pointed out that, well, if Trump were to get in office and appoint a lot of conservatives to run agencies, that we may somehow be protected from their craziness, and then the agencies would no longer have the authority to make a lot of the rules and changes that they have had before this recent ruling. I don't know if that's much solace at all, that we'll be protected from future craziness at all. But that was one thing that one of the writers pointed out.
This show is not about who you should vote for. You can probably guess who the host of this show are going to vote for. But that's not what the show is about. But it is about facts. And one of them that came up is that Stu said a few minutes ago, electric cars are going to make a big difference in reducing pollution. And that's true if and only if you get sustainable energy producing them, that it can. Well, Donald Trump has said, again, I'm just giving the facts, that he does not believe in electric cars and will cut the funding from them. That will have a major effect on the level of pollutions. But Biden did something that was really hard to see, or painful for me to see, related to the same thing. And he did it probably because Trump was going to do it and make it a campaign issue. Most 90% of the solar cells in the world are now produced in China. They have a huge oversupply at the moment. Prices come down by half. We brought that story here to the show a little while ago. Because in Germany, not merely putting them on the roof with the direct view of the sun, but they're putting them on balconies where they only have a partial view, because the cost of solar cells has come down so much that you can afford that. It is half the price of fossil fuel by at least one estimate I saw now. Well, Biden just decided we don't want those Chinese solar cells. We're going to pay much more to have them made by smaller, lower scale, much more costly plants in the US. That obviously is going to hold back solar power. It's going to hold back electric vehicles that depend on a lot of solar power. And it is a political decision that is going to hurt the environment directly if it doesn't change next year.
That's unfortunate, Dave. We've been looking at solar power for the longest, waiting for it to really take off. Other alternative forms of energy as well, wind power and others. But solar, seems to have, such potential that it's a shame that it gets caught up in the political jockeying between nations, and all of a sudden, it seems to be in the U.S. interest to keep low-cost solar out of this country because it's coming from a competitor that that we don't like. Unfortunate impact of politics on technology.
Let's go to the organic food, because I found there's something that really surprised me.
Okay.
What's up? I think this was the Times. Yes, they did a large article on should you buy organic food, and on most people who buy organic think that it's healthier. The Times article is pretty clear. The data is very mixed, and many of the scientists think that there really is no direct health value for buying organic food. But the ones that were interviewed for this Times article all said they personally buy organic food. Mm. Why? Because the pesticides we are using are killing farm workers in large numbers and inevitably. So that they buy organic, may or may not be better for health, but they do it in order to protect the workers there.
Yeah, the
powerful argument.
Yeah, the growing methodologies of organic are so much more friendly, not just to people, but to the planet in general. So many of the pesticides that are used in in large-scale agriculture are harmful to insects and other creatures that we need to keep the planet in balance. And as the agri industry has grown and consolidated to be the behemoth that it is today, there's just widespread destruction of ecosystems across the planet because of the way that food is grown traditionally, and in particular with the pesticides and the chemicals that are used in the growing methodologies. So you're right there. It may not be the food itself, the produce itself, although I do believe it is better, but all the byproducts of traditional growing are definitely harmful to people and the environment.
There definitely are serious scientists who think you should go organic because it's healthier. And there are other serious scientists who think it's unproven. We're not going to make you have to make that decision yourself. One thing we brought up, I don't know if we have time before the break, is talking to the dead.
I want to talk about that after the break, Dave, because I think that is a fascinating subject. We've talked about it previously on the show, and there have been some breakthroughs with video avatars and AI technology that have really, excuse the expression, brought to life that whole those applications. So let's talk about that when we come back. Fascinating stuff. This is Community and Technology on WHR 90.3 FM with Dave Burstein and Stu Reid. Stay tuned. We'll be right back after a brief musical break. Marketing Technology with Dave Burstein and Stu Reid.
Let me have a minute here as we open the second half to go back to something we talked about in the first half. In the first half, as we were talking about the environment and how it's especially harmful to people who are Black and Latino and poor, we said some things about what Donald Trump's attitude was, which disagrees with ours, but we're not going to tell you. I then went and pointed out some of the things where Joe Biden has been hurting the environment. That's the right thing for us to do on a nonprofit radio station in community and technology. We are not going to tell you how to vote. That's not our job. But if we come forth with solid information on what the candidates will do, have done, or will do, that's right in where we should be. We just have to be careful to get our facts straight. And in this one, I'm pretty sure we got the facts right.
Okay. Well, thanks for that clarification, Dave. That is so important that we keep it focused on just the facts as best we can. Now, new developments, or I should say evolving developments in AI, and back in the news again is conversations with the departed. A couple Chinese companies, one called Superbrain and another called Silicon Intelligence, have built models that have sold to several thousand customers already that enable the customers to chat with an animated likeness of dead friends and relatives. This is something just reported in the MIT Technology Review. So it has been vetted. We haven't tried it yet, but it sounds pretty fascinating, Dave. And I mean, to be able to talk to an animated version of your departed friend or relative is pretty amazing. And
it's what us the AI guys do every month.
Yeah, right.
This is not hard. And in fact, the story we have this time is about how big it is in China. But we had a story in an earlier show about how big it is in the US and Europe.
Yeah.
It's absolutely doable. We've brought to the show that AI is wildly overhyped. A lot of things have been promised that haven't happened and probably won't happen for a long time. But some of the stuff is really working well.
Yeah, it looks like, Dave, just kind of reading some of the stuff that's out there in the news. Looks like the whole AI companion technology is one of the leading revenue sources. At least right now, today, it's the hottest revenue source in AI. And essentially, we talked about talking with the dead. The AI companion technology, which I guess is a kind of a spinoff of that, creates an avatar that can become your friend and that can counsel you and talk to you and be there for you when you need a companion. And presumably you can shape that avatar to talk like you want, to give you the kind of comfort that you want and the way that you want to hear it and or see it. It's kind of mind-boggling, Dave, when you think about, okay, what is the perfect mate to have? How would you describe that person? How would you describe the perfect friend? And then to be able to program that into an avatar, that's pretty stunning stuff.
It seems when you first think about it that this is a horrifying thing. And a lot of people have taken that attitude. But you think about it a little bit more, and you see that it's a good thing for other people.
Mm-hmm.
The classic example is people who have no community there because they're gay in a conservative town, because they're Black in a town in Maine or New Hampshire, where it's almost all white. And if you're a high school geek and the football players and the popular social people are bullying you for being a geek because they're jealous that you're smart, where do you find friends? Well, the web has done an incredible job of bringing people together like that and getting the feedback, getting the acceptance. And these things are not as good as a great human being. But in the last year or two, it's gotten to the point that many of these AIs that can talk to you, give them 15 seconds of your voice, they'll put of a voice of your ex-girlfriend and they'll make it sound like your ex-girlfriend. And we've all seen some of the videos and images that look like a photo. So that can be done very easily. In fact, you're going to be able to do that on your iPhone in October.
Really?
Both of those. Yeah.
Wow.
It may not work quite as well as the big computers in the cloud, but both of those, the ability to clone a voice, the ability to create an illustration, is working in software, smaller large language models, not the great big ones like ChatGPT, now can fit on the next generation of mobile phones.
Wow.
Which is remarkable.
It certainly is. It certainly is. So, you know, that the pundits are expecting that whole area of AI to take off, Dave, and they're saying, you know, just because of the emotional significance and gravitas that kind of application has with people, that it's really going to stick. It's going to work.
6 months ago, I would have thought that there is no such thing as a personality of an artificial intelligence that is able to sound empathetic. It is now clear that problem has been solved. That doesn't mean the AI is conscious. It doesn't say anything about the intelligence of the AI. But, for example, an AI trained to come up with text to console or speak to and give information to somebody who's seriously ill is getting better results than practicing physicians in the same field. Now, that doesn't mean they have more empathy. These are machines. But it does mean that the techniques of AI, where you get a heck of a lot of data, trillions of words, and use some fancy math to figure out how they all go together, can today give a voice or some text that people see as at least as empathetic as most physicians.
Yeah.
That's how good it's getting.
Yeah, that's a big deal. And then when you factor on top of that, you know, folks that are lonely, folks that live alone, folks that don't have a community to talk to, when you can create that community or at least a person for those lonely folks to talk to, that's big. It's big.
Yeah. And one of the things that convinced me, doctors, especially residents who are just getting going, when they have a difficult conversation coming up, say a patient with multiple sclerosis and they not a multiple sclerosis, have been going to the AIs like ChatGPT and asking, what should I say to them? What helps them?
Wow.
And gets advice on that. It's been done that well.
Wow. Wow, that's pretty amazing. The professional treatment providers are going to AI to fine-tune their bedside manner and their conversation with
not all of them, but the ones who aren't so
but
sure.
I mean that any of them are doing that is amazing.
Actually, I should say the ones that aren't so sure and are honest with themselves to say they need help. Which is very hard for a doctor to do.
That's a big deal. That's a big deal. Wow. So what else is going on, Dave? You know, we talked about AI and talking to the dead. We're talking about AI creating your best friend, filling up your world with hope, with love, where maybe you don't have it. what else is happening in the world of technology? We got about maybe 10 minutes left before we got to wrap it up.
Okay. I got some really interesting stuff for the last 5 minutes, but let me quickly throw some of the stories at you. We all know that you can create misinformation with AI that can be very convincing. Just as we were talking about, you can make it sound like somebody. You could make it sound like Al Michaels, the longtime sportscaster, who has been turned into an avatar, which will be used this year by NBC at the Olympics.
Oh, really?
They sound just like him, and they got years and years of tapes to give
Sure.
the AI the information. And NBC said they're going to put it on the air.
Wow. So he can be in four places at the same time. Calling the track meet, calling the swimming meet, calling the soccer game, and wow.
Now, we're not going to go today into the question if we have Al Michaels doing 3 different jobs, are 2 people going to be fired? But that's something we'll have to think of.
Yeah, about this. Yeah.
Now, I brought up a few minutes ago the fact that the Cold War with China is costing Americans more and more. In one of the things that just came through is a Washington official said we should get our new scientists not from China, who should go to India because of the security problems with somebody from China. There are a lot of good Indian engineers. one of them is the head of Google right now. But this will cripple the United States AI work for years. An enormous percentage, maybe 20%, maybe 40%, there's no solid number, of the top AI scientists in the United States and Europe got their first education in China. And many of them were patriots, but we had the better universities for this. We pay people $300,000 and $1 million to be AI engineers. You can learn a lot. So 10 years ago, there was no question. If you wanted to really learn AI, you came to the United States, England, or a few other places like Switzerland. That's still largely true, but the Chinese universities, a friend of mine teaches at Stanford, says that Tsinghua in Beijing is just as good as Stanford. And I'm reading the papers and seeing the work they're doing. Some of the best AI experts in the world are the Chinese universities as well.
Now, Dave, isn't it true that among and within the scientific community itself, that nationality and borders really kind of disappeared? I mean, so much of scientific study and reporting is open and available to the whole scientific community, is it not? I mean, it's the politicians that come in and want to manipulate. I think among the scientists themselves, I don't think they have that bias, do they? From your view?
Certainly some do, but most don't. I just got a paper yesterday from 3 American artificial intelligence scientists, major paper, and 4th author was from Shanghai Jingtao University, because they work with the best around. And that's the attitude that many, many scientists have, that science should not be political. But that is not the attitude of politicians in Washington. Second bit, I'm talking about the cost of fraud. The graduate students in engineering and most technical fields in the United States have not been coming from people who grew up in America and went to college in America. I'm sure the majority of engineering graduate students are from other countries, including France and Canada, and especially China and India. If we got cut off from that, that would really hurt our universities. Last one, price of the Cold War. Story I saw today. The giant pharmaceutical companies that can bring drugs to market effectively, which can cost $1 billion and distribute them, are backing away from making deals with Chinese companies that are discovering new drugs. There are a handful of drugs, especially in cancer, that have come out of China the last few years and among the most useful in the world. Not that many, but it's starting to happen. And all the big drug companies said, well, you got to connect with the scientists in China. But this Cold War is scaring away those companies from finding something that may cure your sister's cancer one day. Not worth it. But let's go back.
Yeah, I'm hoping that the scientific community themselves will break through that one, Dave. I mean, I have a hard time believing that scientists that are devoted to their craft, and particularly healthcare scientists that are devoted to healing, are going to be able to abide by that. Oh, well, I'm not looking at this technology. I'm not looking at that technology because it's coming from China. I don't see that being sustainable, but that's maybe I'm being a little optimistic. I don't know.
I can tell you that among the AI scientists, almost all the best work with and regularly visit China today.
Yeah.
I'm talking about Yoshua Bengio and Jeff Hinman and people like that. And Elon Musk, although he's not an AI scientist, he's a damn good engineer.
And I suspect the same thing is going to apply to energy as that whole area evolves.
Maybe, but tell that to the MIT professor who may have fudged his accounting on a trip to China that he worked with a Chinese university so as not to pay taxes. He may not have reported it. Who for 5 years was looking at the face of a major jail term that was being promoted by the Justice Department under guess which president because of a small paperwork error. Wait, he may have been fudging, like a lot of people fudge their taxes, but they treated it. They sent in the FBI, guns loaded.
Wow.
Arrested him. His family fell apart. The MIT people who knew them, some of the most distinguished professors in the world, spoke up for him. The lawsuit wasn't dropped for years, and he had that hanging over his head. That's something that we're paying a price for.
Yeah.
Because any kind of discrimination, including discrimination against good Chinese scientists, forced us.
Sure. It's a global community, regardless of the lines that folks that countries create. We are really one people, and there's one life here on the planet. And until we figure out how to connect and understand that and really work to lift up everyone, we're going to continue to be in trouble. So, Dave, we've got a minute or so left, a couple minutes left before we got to sign off.
Give you two really quick. One of the biggest questions in AI is how many people are going to lose their jobs because AI is going to be able to do them. The answer I have from several first-rate economists who looked at this hard is probably not that many and not that fast. But it's definitely not zero. I got some data this week that the number of job postings in software fell by 21% compared to 2 years ago because the AIs really are making software developers more creative. A lot of people who used to do things like newspaper ads, the company is just doing it themselves using an AI because it's good enough. That's one of the things. Next thing, something practical. There's a new kind of machine on the market It's using Microsoft software, and they call it the AI Copilot.
Mhm.
What does this mean? It means it has an extra chip or extra transistors that let it run pretty substantial AI programs. The kind, for example, that could be right now looking at my face, taking my voice, and using in my voice delivering this show in Spanish or Chinese.
Mhm.
That will run on your iPhone, and this year, and I know that partly because we know what's going to be in the iPhone, and partly because there's some people working on machines now. Started with the hackers, but just there's people who are just doing it right and left, who are building substantial AI models that can work on something like the advanced cell phone.
Wow, wow. Now, sidebar, Dave, I just read just before we went on air that one of the other features of the new iPhone that's coming out this fall is that it's going to have satellite connectivity. So that when you are in dead spots where there's no cell tower, the phone seamlessly connects to satellites and enables you to, right now, I think it's just data and text, but they're forecasting that it will soon be voice communication as well over that link. That's a
Again,
breakthrough.
the news we're getting has a lot of misinformation.
That's
It's
not
already
true.
happening on the Chinese satellites with
Okay.
Huawei. Apple can send a text message, and
Uh-huh.
maybe the end of this year, maybe 2 years from now, we'll be able to do voice. It is already being done routinely on the most advanced Huawei phones, and China has their own set of satellites that can relay.
Okay, but it is coming to Apple this fall. That is correct news. Is that right, Dave?
At this point, it's not confirmed what it'll be.
Hmm.
It's not impossible that it'll just be text
Hmm.
or limited amount of data and not voice. But that's T-Mobile has said officially they're going to have voice working with Apple soon, one day.
Okay. All right. Well, stay tuned. You heard it first here on Community Technology. We're about out of time, Dave. Want to sign off here. Any final comments to our audience before you leave?
Well, decency and kindness matter. And it keeps coming up when I think of how we should make policy for artificial intelligence, which is what I'm working on.
Okay.
And I think it's part of what Stu finds when he figures out how to make better broadband networks for
There you
people.
go. Okay. You heard it here on Community Technology with Dave Burstein and Stu Reid. Every Wednesday, 5 p.m. on WHCR 90.3 FM. Tune in. You just might learn something. Good night.